Folks, we've talked on this channel recently about sleeper agents and the idea that there may be, Iran-linked or Iran-loyal operatives within the United States that are actually planning attacks to hurt American citizens as basically revenge for what's going on in Iran. Their supreme leader was assassinated by Israel with the support of America. They've been absolutely decimating the leadership there. They've killed the leaders. They've killed the leaders' replacements. They've killed the replacements. And apparently they've even put the main new guy, who's the son of the last leader they killed, in a coma, and he might be missing one leg. Now, there have been rumors that Benjamin Netanyahu might have died. They're saying there's an AI video going around of him. That's not been confirmed yet. But what I can confirm to you is it does appear that there has been a lot of very unusual attacks within the United States, attacks of a terrifying nature, let's say, if you can read between the lines on that. And a lot of people feel like the people that are getting targeted in these attacks are clearly getting targeted because of revenge connections to Israel and what Israel and the US have been doing in the Middle East. And it is actually getting really scary. I'm really concerned that, there might be a lot more of these really horrible attacks to come from people and, whether it's sleeper cells, just deranged, lone people that want to terrorize, you know what I'm saying? And I just really hope that this isn't just, the beginning of more sadness.
We begin tonight here with...
This is going around. This is really, really sad, okay? And this was just yesterday. A 41-year-old man basically was caught intentionally ramming a truck straight through the front doors of Temple Israel, one of the largest Reform synagogues in the US. And it makes you wonder, why is this happening? And why is this happening now? And who are the people responsible for this? And are they doing this completely off their own volition? Or are they being primed and loaded up to do horrible things that will hurt America, Israel, and the Jewish community?
With the horrific scene unfolding at one of the largest synagogues in the U.S. Authorities say a driver rammed his truck through the barricades and smashed through the front door of Temple Israel just outside Detroit. Smoke could be seen coming from the building. Sources telling ABC News the driver was armed with a rifle. The Oakland County Sheriff says armed security opened fire, the suspect's truck bursting into flames. 140 children among those inside at a preschool, the race to get the children out. The attacker is dead. Tonight, investigators are now trying to determine a possible motive. ABC's Alex Perez leading us off. He's on the ground in Michigan tonight.
Tonight, terror in Michigan, smoke pouring from the roof of one of the nation's largest synagogues after an armed man in a truck steered around the security barricades and plowed right through the front doors. It happened just after noon. Police racing to Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan, the nation's largest Reformed Jewish congregation and home to a preschool, 140 little kids inside when the chaos unfolded. The truck slamming through a set of doors and driving straight down the hall.
He breached the building, drove down the hall, and he was engaged by security.
Dustin Shaw was working in the synagogue when he heard the crash.
I saw someone lying on the ground, and that person happened to be one of the head of security who got hit by the car. And then after that, I heard gunshots, bang, 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 bang. And I believe it was obviously one of our security officers.
Police say the synagogue's security guards fired on the truck, which burst into flames. Thick smoke streaming from the building past a playground just outside. Reporter Jolie Sherman from our local station WXYZ on the scene.
Just this massive police presence here in West Bloomfield. On my way here, there were just dozens of police vehicles from various law enforcement agencies.
Police wearing gas masks, finding the driver dead in the burning truck. Sources tell us he was armed with a rifle. Amid all the smoke and sirens, authorities wondering, did he act alone or was someone else involved? The community going into lockdown, neighbors told to shelter in place. But at the synagogue, a scene of panic. Rabbi Jennifer Kaluzny witnessing car upon car of frantic parents.
We started comforting parents who were running from all directions trying to get their children. And some of them were obviously panicking to the point that it's a good thing someone was there waiting for them to literally hold up. And the cars just kept coming.
Then, roughly 2 hours after the chaos unfolded, the welcomed news. The danger had passed, and everyone inside the synagogue had been accounted for.
No kids, this is the important thing, no kids or no staff was injured whatsoever.
So it's a bit crazy, right, that they're kind of trying to frame it like, this is a win because no kids got hurt. But the fact that this is even happening is extremely alarming. It's extremely scary that, what looks like a pretty quaint American town is being absolutely torn apart by this kind of activity. I mean, look at the scenes here. You see how many cars, how many emergency vehicles were there down the street. This was like, it looked like a 100-car pileup, but these are emergency services, emergency responders getting to the scene. And unfortunately, it does seem like that there might actually be connections between this incident and the war. Now, reports would actually come out to basically suggest that the suspect had explicitly claimed that his family members were recently killed in an airstrike in Lebanon.
Another terrifying attack today, this one at a synagogue in Michigan. Tonight, we're learning new details about the armed man who rammed his truck loaded with fireworks and chemicals into a West Bloomfield synagogue. Investigators say 41-year-old Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, who was born in Lebanon, became a naturalized U.S. citizen a decade ago. Law enforcement sources tell ABC News he posted on social media that his relatives were killed in the ongoing Israeli strikes. This is video of his Michigan home. The FBI calling this a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community.
So, look, it's obvious what's going on here, right? It's obvious what's going on here. Basically saying that the person, their family members were hit in a recent airstrike. It is what it is. Now, unfortunately, this isn't the only incident that's happened of this kind in the last 24 hours. Because in addition to this, as they said on the news, another attack, okay, you can see it over here. Basically, an active shooter would enter an ROTC classroom in Norfolk, Virginia, actually shooting and killing Lieutenant Colonel Brandon A. Shaw. So here's the other attack
with that
took
frightening
place.
Campus assault at Old Dominion University in Virginia. A gunman with known ties to ISIS entering a classroom and opening fire. Seconds later, students in that classroom taking decisive action to end the attack. Eyewitness News reporter Michelle Fisher joining us now with new developments tonight. Michelle.
Mark, this is now being investigated as an act of terrorism. The life of this man taken, the veteran Army pilot surviving combat missions in the Middle East during the early 2000s, only to be killed here on U.S. soil. And there could have been other casualties if it were not for those brave students confronting the attacker and ending his life as he tried to end theirs.
So this is the second incident, and at the very least, the Americans and the authorities are actually quick to act and to stop these things, and they're taking out the perpetrators pretty quick before they're hurting loads of people. But again, it's very alarming. Is this just the beginning of these kind of things becoming commonplace in America because of what's going on in the Middle East? This is terrifying, and that's kind of the point.
Prior to him conducting this act of terrorism, he shouted, stated Allah Akbar.
Those words and then gunshots as a convicted terrorist targeted Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia.
All of a sudden we heard a commotion, a lot of people rumbling, starting to get up. We started running, and that's when we heard gunshots.
The FBI identifying the gunman as 36-year-old Mohammed Jalloh, a former Virginia National Guard member. Around 10:45 Thursday morning, investigators say he calmly walked into a classroom on campus, asked if it was the ROTC, and when someone said yes, he shot the instructor several times. The student cadets fighting back.
There were students that were in that room that subdued him and rendered him no longer alive. I don't know how else to say it, but they basically were able to terminate the threat.
So he was not shot?
He was not shot.
The rampage left 2 students injured, one critically. A third victim who died, identified late today as U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, a veteran Army aviator who was a professor of military science at ODU, where he was also an alum.
Our campus and our community have been truly shaken if ever impacted by this senseless act of violence.
So obviously there's links to them guys, the IS guys, all right? We don't rock with those guys. I thought they weren't a problem. I thought Trump destroyed that organization. But the gunman has allegedly been linked to that organization, and now there would be new details coming out that reveal exactly how the shooter was ultimately subdued, because it was a little bit ominous. They said they terminated the threat, but they didn't say exactly how, and apparently it was the students that actually took him out and caught this hat.
Everywhere. Raymond, this suspect, he first shot the teacher as he broke into the class. Then he fired on the students. And this is really incredible. The students fought back. In fact, the students, are the ones who subdued him. One of those students happened to have a knife, and the FBI said they killed him.
Insane.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable to me that they were able to do this. When you look at this offender, I'm sure that people that are close to him or around him, that there was some leakage through his friends, coworkers, if he was working, or even his family members. And not that leakage is a direct threat. It's more grievance-driven rhetoric that...
So they got busy with the knives. They chefed him up, all right? They chinged him down. That's what they would say if you were a UK drill rapper. You got chefed up, all right? Got poked, got nanked. And respect, hats off to them, all right? They got busy with the knives, all right? He came in there with a gun. They literally brought a knife to a gunfight, and this guy lost. So bless up for that, all right? Really got busy with the knives. Those students, absolutely incredible work, incredible knife work on display, all right? But how is this still happening? This is the second one in 24 hours, okay? Now, there's some interesting information about the suspect going around. He was apparently arrested back in 2016 for having basically been part of an active terror plot for those guys, the ISIS. I don't even want to say them. I don't even want to say the name, right? Basically, this is a little bit of backstory about the guy who did it, okay? He basically was accused of plotting attacks to support these folks who I'm not rocking with whatsoever, but also I'm quite scared of them, okay? Apparently, he walked into a Blue Ridge Arsenal gun store, an indoor target range, to purchase an AR-15 rifle. He had no idea his every move was being monitored by the FBI. He spent 10 minutes in the shop attempting to buy the assault weapon, but was told he didn't have the forms of ID to make the purchase. And he told employees he would return. As soon as he walked out the door, the FBI came in. He came back the next day and bought a different assault rifle for about $1,200. How? The store, following the FBI's instructions, rendered it inoperable before Jallow left. Now, that's interesting. Former member of the Virginia National Guard, he was arrested Sunday and accused in federal court of plotting a domestic terrifying attack on behalf of the Islamic bad guys, authorities would announce. So this is in 2016. This is the guy, okay? So this is what he had going on. This is what he was up to, all right? Prosecutors said someone close to him had basically told prosecutors that he wanted to carry out an attack in the style of Nidal Hassan, who killed 13 people in a 2009 shooting rampage at Fort Hood, Texas. He told the person he thinks about conducting an attack all the time and was close to doing so at one point. Now, obviously, when he finally plucked up the courage to do it, he ended up on the wrong side of a shank, which is glorious, but he did take someone with him, unfortunately. And, we don't want to minimize or downplay the seriousness of this. Rest in peace to the, to the teacher and the educator at that school who lost their life. But fortunately, he wasn't able to go further. He clearly had big plans. He'd recently purchased a Glock 19. This is back, a Glock 9. This is back in 2016, okay? He made contact with a source who was working with a now-deceased overseas co-conspirator who is a member of the Islamic bad guys. Now, he was contacted by someone overseas who was encouraging him to do this. This could be something that Iran is doing now, honestly. Like, there's absolutely no reason that couldn't be going on. Maybe that's who he was activated by, whether you want to say sleeper cell or just influenced by really bad guys. But this is terrifying that this is going on, all right? And is this going to continue? We should be scared, honestly. So the overseas co-conspirator encouraged the source to have an in-person meeting with Jallow, and they met on April 9th. The FBI was watching, but the FBI wasn't watching this time, and it ended up happening. Fortunately, those brave students were able to get busy with the nanks, all right? At that meeting, Jallow praised Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz, who killed 5 U.S. service members in Chattanooga, Tennessee last year, and at one point he suggested that someone known for organizing contests for cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad would make a good target. That's definitely not the type of contest that you should be doing. That can definitely end badly for you. That's all I'm going to say on that one, okay? So they said, you have to pick an action and take it because time is not on your side, he wrote to an ally. According to court documents, he told a confidential source he made a 6-month visit to Africa the year before, and he met with members of the Islamic bad guys in Nigeria. He told the source he was ready to travel to Libya to join the group directly there. He bought a Glock in February, but couldn't buy an assault rifle in Charlotte last month. In May, Jallow told the undercover source that it was better to plan an operation for Ramadan. It's Ramadan now, all right? This is a heightened period of security, unfortunately. And he said that he knew attack operations were 100% the right thing. How was this guy even free? if this is what he was getting busy doing before, back in 2016. He said he wanted to launch an attack, but he was hesitant. I really want to, but I don't want to give my word and not fulfill it, he told the source in April. And in June, he was asked to provide weapons for the undercover source. He indicated his thought he was planning for the next year's Ramadan, not this year's. And he eventually did it. Unfortunately, the students were able to stop him. He was asking about providing money or weapons in the event he couldn't carry out the attack himself, so he was looking to fund terrifying events. All right, he made a cash transfer of $500 to an FBI agent that he thought was a member of the bad guys. He was a native of Sierra Leone, a U.S. citizen, taken into custody by FBI agents while driving outside his Sterling, Virginia neighborhood. Is that Virginia? On his way to work. All right. It's crazy. He was a specialist in the Virginia National Guard, but he was not loyal to the Americans. He was active from 2009 to 2015, and he was a combat engineer. He was part of the operation. He was part of the home team. So the fact that he would turn around and do stuff like this is terrifying. It makes you wonder how many more people are playing both sides in the ranks of the American military and National Guard and beyond. Okay, it is terrifying. Apparently, he quit the National Guard after listening to lectures of deceased radical Muslim cleric Anwar al-Awlaki. He looked up his lectures online after hearing the cleric referred to in the news media as a hate preacher, and he found himself persuaded to plot violent actions. These people should not be spreading these messages, quite frankly. His rhetoric has been linked to several terrifying actions and plots, even after he was killed by a US drone strike in Yemen 2011, so at least he's out of here. But Hassan developed a relationship with the cleric after hearing him lecture at the Dal al-Hijra Mosque in Northern Virginia. And Omar Mateen, who killed 49 people in a nightclub in Orlando last month, had watched videos of al-Awlaki. I didn't even know that that was a part of what happened in that incident in Orlando. That is actually frightening, okay? He appeared briefly in court Tuesday, a slim but muscular man. He spoke softly. They don't expect a bond. Why was he out? Okay, now following his initial arrest, you know what's even more crazy? His family would claim it was a setup. Well, you can't claim that now, can you? Not that he's here anymore, but basically the accused American bad guys plotter was set up according to his family. Don't know about that. It says Mohammed Baylor Jallo, the former Virginia National Guardsman arrested last week on charges of plotting to provide material to the bad guys, was manipulated by a government informant, his siblings say. Jallo was mischaracterized by the government, the family. This is aged like milk. This is aged like some full-fat milk. The family members added with innocent or faultless words were twisted to make the 26-year-old naturalized citizen originally from Sierra Leone sound like a budding terrorist. He faces 20 years in prison. Why wasn't he given 20 years? Why wasn't he kept out of the community? What the hell has been allowed to happen? He's just another Mohammed that got set up. What a shameless load of nonsense, right? And there are definitely profiling that goes on against people of the Middle Eastern descent. Let's not get that twisted. But this guy was clearly disturbed and he was a danger to the community. It says he sympathizes with the oppressed abroad. The FBI used his love for those being oppressed against him by inciting him in all the manners they deems fit. What a load of nonsense. Okay, and this basically recaps all of the previous things, his radicalization. It said Cherner believed his brother looked up to the informant as somebody who was older and whose opinion should be respected. He looked at him as an older brother with more knowledge about what was going on in the Middle East, and he was trying to understand their plight. The uses of FBI informants in terrifying cases has become a source of controversy after several high-profile cases in which terrifying plots have appeared to have been devised and propagated by the informants themselves. The FBI is believed to have 15,000 informants active in the United States, but that is a trick. They're tricking them into basically expressing that they'd be willing to do these things. I honestly am on board with it. If you want to go around and if you can basically corrupt and convince people to do these things that are absolutely out of the realms of what should be accepted in a society, yeah, great. We've identified you're willing to do this mad shit that an FBI informant is convincing you to do. Some cleric will do the same thing. You need to get you out of society. Unfortunately, this guy was allowed back into society, and it's had disastrous consequences. It says, while the full details of Jallo's interactions with the informant are not yet known, his family says the behavior linked by the government to terrifying things is being mischaracterized. What a load of nonsense. Jallo's family claims that in his case, innocent actions and faultless words or tough talk are being conflated together by the government to paint a picture of him that's more nefarious than reality. Saying Mohammed was a military kid, he owned other guns before this happened. He generally bought and practiced with guns all the time anyway, says Jallo's sister, Maritu Jallo, grew up here in Virginia and never thought of something like buying a gun as remarkable or suspicious. She described Mohammed's statements to the informant as an emotional response to an incitement and said her brother engaged in tough talk to impress someone he respected. He said he was being manipulated by the informant into saying things he never would have said otherwise. I don't buy it. The government's taking statements and actions they had nothing to do with one another and putting them together to paint a certain picture. They're connecting the dots. Well, now this is a shameless load of nonsense, realistically. And interestingly enough, okay, during his original trial, Mohammed Bela Jallow basically claimed that he was radicalized while attempting to find a wife. He said he was just looking for a wife. He was just looking for, one of them brides, one of them war brides, one of them terrifying brides that when you do terrifying things, you get yourself a wife at the end of it. It's ridiculous. He said he was looking for a wife. He ended up trying to aid a terrifying attack. Mohammed Bela Jallow said he was looking to meet a Muslim wife when he reached out to an IS recruiter that he'd met overseas. Instead, he agreed to take part in a terrorist attack on American soil. I was just looking for a wife. I was just getting on Hinge to find a wife, and whoopsie doodles, I ended up running into an extremist cleric, and now I decided to take part in a terrorist attack. All in the name of love, right? This is ridiculous. Jallow, a former National Guardsman, was sentenced Friday to 11 years. So he got 11 years, and this would have been 2017. How's he out? I mean, he's out in 2026. I wonder when he was released. That's what I wonder. He got 11 years for attempting to provide support to the bad guys. He bought a Glock, AR-15, we already knew that. His defense lawyer said that his behavior sprung not from radical fervor, but from heavy drug use. Oh, it was the drugs now. He was trying to find a wife. He was trying to get busy, trying to get laid. Also the drugs. And, a bigger boy, an older boy made me do it. Give me a break. He apparently had untreated trauma from a childhood marked by R-word, war, and neglect. Honestly, I would normally have sympathy, but not in this case. The gullible 27, they think you're gullible by even attempting this defense. His attachment to the bad guy militia group was superficial and confused. He's clearly a follower, all right? He was just getting influenced by these influencers. It is ridiculous, okay? U.S. attorney said he was not unsympathetic, but Jallow's past did not justify his actions. He's probably is and was a very disturbed and troubled individual, probably in a very bad place, but individuals in these situations do very dangerous things. He could have stepped away, and he never did that. A U.S. citizen, he lived in Loudoun County at the time of his 2016 arrest. According to court papers, he was born in Sierra Leone, the youngest of 8. His father was polygamous, and his young mother fled to the U.S. when he was 2. His father and stepmother left Sierra Leone as well, leaving him with extended family. For several years, he was abused by an older cousin. At 8, the country's civil war made him a refugee. He was hungry, starving, and crying. He was bullied because of his distended abdomen. He made it to the US after 6 months, reunited with his family, but after a few years, his dad left and his mum was deported. He lived with various relatives who largely ignored him. He spent most of his time indoors watching spicy videos, according to court papers. I mean, look, not everyone ends up plotting terrifying attacks because they're watching spicy videos. You know what I'm saying? You gotta just keep it moving. Okay, here's what it is. He had a tendency to agree with plans, but failed to follow through. Apparently, an assertion was greeted by soft chuckles from family in the gallery. Yeah, we're not soft chuckling now, are we? He seemed like he was looking for something to latch onto, and barring that, he would wander rather aimlessly. They're infantilizing this grown man who was planning terrifying attacks on the people of America. Absolutely zero sympathy. Apparently, he was giving money to charities, advocating for kids in Africa. Friends and relatives would say he was frustrated that he couldn't do more for the refugees. But what did he actually do for anyone? All he's done is brought pain and destruction to his community. This guy's a dirtbag, okay? He said, I watched videos online of civilians escaping Assad on the beach shores and walking long distances. Took my memory back to when I was a child and a civilian in the Sierra Leone war, inciting an emotional reaction rather than a rational reaction. Unfortunately, I come to the same terrifying propaganda that's responsible for so many atrocities across the world. Okay. He visited his father, Sierra Leone, and he met recruiters from that awful group. They encouraged him to go to Libya and fight for them. He gave them several $100s, but when he got on a truck to Libya, he changed his mind and fled. So he's a coward too. I mean, thank God he did, but he is a coward. We were packed like sardines. Guys in the truck would whip people with a hose to pack you in. This was the worst, most scary situation I'd ever been in as an adult. So you went and did attacks on behalf of those guys that whipped you and beat you, all right? You felt so sad. You were looking for a wife, and then you should have realized these guys are scumbags. The United States, with all of its problems, at least they're not doing that, okay? He returned to the US and he made contact with Abu Said Soudani, a now deceased member of that group who was plotting an attack, but he claims he wasn't looking for a co-conspirator but for a wife. It was just all about the friends that he made along the way. He had a girlfriend of 6 years that dumped him, sent intimate photos of herself with a new man for emphasis. Okay. Yeah, this guy was dealing with a lot, all right? I still don't have sympathy, but this guy was definitely on a path to madness, okay? Started smoking loud, doing blow, hitting the, hitting the shrooms, and basically was using them every day to kill the pain he was in. He cast his depression as some kind of noble inspiration, but it was self-destruction. A Sudani man connected Jalo with who he thought would be someone that would help him find a bride, but it was actually an FBI informant. He said that the informant pushed him towards terrifying acts. For 2 months, he wrote, the informant hounded him with nearly constant entreaties to engage in a violent attack. Yeah, but you're not supposed to take part in it, all right? The FBI informant told him about a plot to hurt US military personnel, which is exactly what he ended up doing, all right? Drew out all the excuses back then when he got caught up, but that's exactly what he was planning to do. They asked him about acquiring weapons. He tried to buy an assault rifle. The FBI were watching. The gun had been rendered inoperable. He said he felt remorse for the shame he'd brought on his family and the National Guard, as well as the black mark he cast on other refugees at a time when many have been banned for the countries. But now look, all right, he's given the refugees a really bad name. And he was listed online as a known person who would be willing to do terrifying things before this happened. Okay, this is the latest. This has been updated, but he was already known on the counter-extremism project. He was already known, right? He was released early 2024, hadn't even been out for that long. I mean, look, I know that people serve their time and they got to move on. They got to let him out. But clearly he wasn't reformed. This guy should not have been let out, all right? So we've heard all the story of basically how, he basically, got this case and then ended up beating it. But really what's crazy here, right? He pled guilty in October 2016. He got 11-year sentence. In a letter to the court, he renounced those bad guys. He said they were superficial and dishonest interpretation of Islam. And he got released in December of 2024. Early release was not publicly specified. They didn't give a reason for that. Usually, people convicted of terrifying things are not eligible for a sentence reduction due to a 2018 prison reform law called the First Step Act. But he was placed on supervised release that would have run into 2029. Where was the supervision when this happened? What a joke. Okay, and despite his status, he was completely basically left off official watch lists after he was released. And this basically makes one of 4 attacks that have happened in America since the war started.
Why wasn't he on some sort of terror watch list given his history?
Elizabeth, that's $1 million question. And, especially being what he was charged with and an naturalized citizen, why wasn't he deported? Even, I don't know why he was let out early after receiving an 11-year sentence, but why wasn't he deported? And this would have never have happened. Besides a watch list, that's $1 million question as well.
Yeah, Donnell, both these attacks mirror ICE tactics in the past, using vehicles to crash into buildings to gain entrance, using firearms to then kill. There's a pattern here, and we have now had 4 attacks of some kind, at least, since the war in Iran began. The first was that shooting in Austin, Texas, by that man wearing an Iranian flag T-shirt and shouting Allahu Akbar. Then we had this hacker group that launched a massive cyber attack on a huge maker of medical devices yesterday, saying it was in retaliation for the bombing of that all-girls school in Iran. And now these 2 attacks today, one by a man who'd been radicalized by ISIS, the other on a prominent Jewish school and synagogue. Are we going to be seeing more of these as the war continues?
Yeah, I hate to pile on that, but once again, we mentioned the Mamdani case, or at least the Gracie Mansion case, in which individuals
it's
who
not clear that had to do with the war in Iran, or any of these had to do with the war in Iran for that matter. But you're right; those 2 teenagers were also radicalized by ISIS, according to what they told police.
Look, this is terrifying, right? Now we got 4 attacks since this begun, 2 in 24 hours, and I'm really scared. I feel like there's been talks of the drone strikes in California. Iran are definitely not trying to give up on this war. They're taking this thing personally. It's hard to see an off-ramp for this and for this to quieten down easily. And, I feel like this is definitely dark times for the US. It feels like, that period of time when 9/11 happened, in the months and years that followed that, there were a lot of really scary things. There were attacks in the UK. We had the 7/7 attacks. And, there were attacks on military personnel all over the world. We had actually something similar to this where, some extremists in the UK attacked, a soldier at a military installation and they did a really horrible thing in public with machetes in front of everybody, and it was just absolutely disgraceful. And it is really to terrify the community, and it's to terrify the West, and it's to terrify America, and unfortunately that's exactly what they want. So we've got to stay strong in the West, in the US, in the UK, all of that stuff, and not let people terrify the community, but also it just goes to show you maybe some of the things that are going on in the Middle East, unfortunately, they do have very sad and dangerous unintended consequences. So it's definitely really, really concerning. But look, I'll keep you updated. Unfortunately, I do hope that this is the last we're talking about an incident like this, but unfortunately, the way things are going, we're seeing more of them rather than less. So let me know what you think of this. I hope everyone stays safe out there, and until next time, I will speak to you then.